Grant came back bursting into the restaurant where I was sitting. He froze. His face was pale, and he gasped. Something went wrong. Your father. My name is Owen Mitchell. I am 70 years old. And what I discovered that night, it ripped my world apart. If you have ever felt betrayed by the people you trusted most, please hit that like button. And tell me in the comments where you are watching from. Subscribe to the channel because you will not believe what I did next. Now let me tell you how it all started. How my perfect family turned into this nightmare. The day began in silence. It was my 70th birthday. But the house felt wrong. It was the first birthday since my wife Clara passed away 6 months ago. The silence in the house was deafening. Clara was the life of this place. She was the one who would have been baking a cake right now, the one who would have filled these rooms with laughter. Now there was just emptiness. Rachel, my daughter, and her husband Grant insisted on taking me out. They had been relentless about it all week. Dad, you can't sit alone on your 70th, Rachel had said on the phone, her voice dripping with that fake sugary concern I was starting to notice. They wanted to go to Vivid. It was some new flashy restaurant downtown. The kind of place with loud music and tiny portions of food arranged on giant square plates. I hated it already. I told them I would rather just go to the Oak Barrel, the quiet steakhouse down the street. It was our place, mine and Clara's. We had celebrated every anniversary and every birthday there for the last 40 years. It was tradition. Oh, Dad, that place is so stuffy, Rachel complained. It's depressing. We want to celebrate you. Vivid is where everyone goes. It's impossible to get a reservation. But Grant pulled some strings. Pulled strings. Of course he did. Grant was always about appearances, always about showing people what he could get. So I agreed. I agreed because it was easier than arguing. I agreed because in the fog of grief since losing Clara, I had just been agreeing to everything. It felt like I was moving underwater while the world sped up around me. They arrived at my house at 7 p.m. Rachel looked beautiful in a tight black dress, but her eyes were restless, darting around. Grant was already checking his phone the moment he stepped through the door. "Happy birthday, Dad," Rachel said. She gave me a quick, cold hug that felt like brushing against paper. I went to the hall closet to get my coat. The good one. The wool coat Clara had bought me for our last anniversary. I ran my hand over the sleeve. It still faintly smelled of her perfume, or maybe I just imagined it. As I was putting it on, Grant sighed loudly from the foyer. A big, dramatic sound. "Damn it!" Rachel looked at him, instantly alert. What's wrong?" "It's work," he said, waving his phone like a flag. "This idiot on the West Coast team is about to blow the Apex deal. I have to take this call. It's urgent." I didn't even know what the Apex deal was. I didn't care. He looked at Rachel, then at me, putting on his best sorry face. "Owen, I am so sorry. Look, you two go ahead. Get a good table. I'll drive separately. I'll join you as soon as I put out this fire. I promise." I just nodded. I didn't care. I didn't even want to go. "Fine, Grant. Handle your business." He nodded, looking relieved. Too relieved. He and Rachel walked toward the front door. I turned back to the closet mirror to straighten my collar, annoyed that I was even going. And that's when I heard it. The front door was still open. They were standing on the porch just outside the doorway. They must have thought I was out of earshot, lost in my old man routine. It wasn't a shout. It was a whisper. Rachel's voice, sharp and conspiratorial, cut through the quiet night air. "Okay, good," she whispered. "Happy birthday, Dad," she said, but she was talking to Grant, not to me. "I'll distract him for at least 2 hours. You go to his house and change the locks. Simon is waiting for you there." My blood turned to ice. I stopped breathing. The coat suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Change the locks. My house, Simon. That was Grant's father, Simon Mitchell. He was a retired locksmith, spent his days tinkering in his garage. Why was Grant's father meeting him at my house? To change my locks. It made no sense. This was the house I built with my own hands. The house I brought Clara to as a bride. The house where we raised Rachel. The house I planned to die in. My heart wasn't just dropping. It was pounding. A hard, cold rhythm of betrayal. They thought I was just a sad old man lost in his grief. They thought I was deaf. They thought I was stupid. I stood there hidden by the hallway door for a long second. My first instinct was to burst out to scream, "What the hell are you talking about?" But 40 years as a general contractor dealing with shady subcontractors and lying clients taught me one thing: never show your hand until you see theirs. Never let them know what you know. If they were playing a game, I would play it better. I took a deep breath, composed my face into one of simple, sad confusion, and walked out into the foyer. Rachel turned her smile plastered back on. "Ready, Dad?" I looked past her at Grant, who was already walking briskly to his car. "Everything all right?" I asked. "Just fine, Owen," Grant called back. "Just work. I'll see you there soon." I watched him get into his BMW and speed away, not in the direction of his office, but in the direction of my house. "Okay," I said, turning to Rachel. I forced a weak smile. "Let's go. I'm looking forward to this. Vivid." She linked her arm through mine, and I could feel the tension in her grip. She was a terrible liar, and I, her father, was about to become a much, much better one. I stepped back out of the hallway, pulling the coat on deliberately, letting my hands tremble just a little. I fixed my gaze on the empty space where Grant's car had been. "You know," I said, my voice intentionally frail, my hearing must be going. Rachel, who was holding the door open, froze. Her smile tightened. "What do you mean, Dad?" "I thought I heard you say something about, changing locks at my house." It was a direct hit. I watched her. She didn't just freeze. She flinched. It was the same reaction she had as a child when she was caught sneaking cookies before dinner. Grant, who was halfway down the walkway, stopped dead in his tracks. He turned around slowly. The look they exchanged lasted only a second, but it was a lifetime of shared guilt. Then came the performance. Rachel burst into laughter. It wasn't her real laugh. Not that warm, deep laugh she shared with Clara. This was a high-pitched, frantic sound. "Oh, Dad, you really are getting old," she chirped, rushing over to pat my arm. "You completely misheard me." "I did," I asked, playing the part of the confused old fool. "Completely," she insisted, her eyes wide and overly sincere. "I didn't say change locks at your house. I told Grant he needed to check the locks at our house. You know, our new alarm system." Grant, sensing his cue, hurried back up the walkway. He put on his concerned son-in-law face, the one I'd seen so many times at the hospital during Clara's final weeks. It was a good mask. Polished. "That's right, Owen," he said, his voice smooth as oil. "Rachel's right. Just a security check. We were just saying how you've been so worried about security ever since. You know, ever since Mom passed. We've been worried too. About our place." It was brilliant in its own sick way. They took my grief, my very real fear of being alone after Clara died, and they twisted it. They weaponized my vulnerability to cover their lie. Worried about security. I looked at Grant. This was the man who 2 years ago came to me in tears. His hot new tech startup had failed. That's what he told me. He said he owed dangerous people. He needed $500,000, or he'd lose everything, maybe even his life. I looked at Rachel, my only daughter, her face pale with manufactured fear, as she begged me to help her husband. So I did. I liquidated half of my retirement fund. The money Clara and I had saved for our old age for the cruises we were supposed to take for the grandkids' college funds. I gave it to him. $500,000. I saved him. And now here he was patting me on the shoulder like I was a senile dog. Exactly, Owen. He continued smiling. My new alarm system, you know. It's been acting up. I just needed Simon, my dad, to meet me there and take a look. You know he's the only one I trust with locks. It was almost perfect. They used a kernel of truth. Simon was a locksmith to sell the lie. They were good. They were a team. They had practiced this. How many other lies had they told me? How many other things had I misheard? I looked from Rachel's bright, frantic eyes to Grant's smooth, reassuring smile. I saw the greed underneath. It was so clear now, like a crack in a perfect vase. They weren't just taking me to dinner for my birthday. They were performing an act. They were managing their asset. And I was the asset. Or rather, the house was. The house I built. The house where I'd patched Rachel's scraped knees and hosted her 16th birthday party. The house I'd just finished paying the mortgage on the mortgage I'd worked double shifts for 25 years to clear. They wanted it. I had to force the anger down. It tasted like metal in my throat. If I exploded now, I'd lose. They would just call me a crazy, grieving old man. They would double lock the doors, and I'd never get back in. No. I had to play their game. I had to be the man they thought I was. I let out a long, slow sigh. I chuckled, shaking my head. Well, don't I feel foolish, I said, rubbing the back of my neck. I'm so sorry, kids. My hearing, it's just not what it used to be. Check locks, change locks. It all sounds the same to this old man. The relief that washed over their faces was instantaneous. It was sickening. No worries at all, Dad, Rachel said, linking her arm through mine again. Her grip was tight, proprietary. That's what we're here for, to take care of you. Now let's go get you that birthday dinner. You deserve it. You're right, I said. I certainly do. Grant gave me one last reassuring pat on the shoulder. I'll see you at the restaurant, Owen. Don't worry about a thing. He got back in his car and drove off. I watched him go, the lie hanging in the air between us. I knew they were lying. The explanation was too quick, too rehearsed. They were coordinating. I let Rachel lead me to her car. The chill I felt had nothing to do with the evening air. It was the cold, hard realization that my children, my only daughter, were not just lying to me. They were plotting against me. I got into the passenger seat, the smell of her expensive new car leather filling my lungs. I buckled my seatbelt, my hands steady. It's so nice of you to do this for me, sweetheart, I said, turning to her with the saddest, most grateful smile I could muster. She smiled back, her eyes shining with victory. Anything for you, Dad. The trap was set, but I wasn't sure who was the mouse and who was the cheese. The drive to the restaurant was the longest 15 minutes of my life. The interior of Rachel's luxury SUV, the one I'd helped her buy after her last car emergency, felt small, suffocating. The silence was heavy, thick with the words I'd overheard on the porch. Rachel, true to her word, tried to distract me. She chattered. My God, how she chattered. It was a waterfall of nonsense, a frantic attempt to fill the air so I wouldn't have time to think. Look at the traffic tonight, Dad. Just awful, isn't it? I read an article that said this city has the worst congestion since 2019. I just nodded, my eyes fixed on the windshield. And the weather. Can you believe this humidity in October? My hair is just ruined. I bought this new serum, but it just doesn't work. Maybe I should. I tuned her out. I looked at my daughter, my little girl Rachel. Her knuckles were white on the steering wheel. She was talking about hair serum, but her eyes were scanning the rearview mirror as if she was afraid of being followed. She wasn't distracting me. She was distracting herself. She was nervous. Good. She had every reason to be. We finally arrived at Vivid. It was worse than I imagined. The entrance was a purple neon archway. The music hit us before the door even opened, a heavy pounding thump, thump, thump. that I felt in my chest. Inside it was dark. It took my 70-year-old eyes a full minute to adjust. It was packed with young people in expensive clothes all shouting at each other over the noise. "Isn't it fantastic, Dad?" Rachel yelled over the din, smiling brightly. "It's vivid," I said. A hostess led us to a tiny table wedged between a fake indoor waterfall and a speaker. The menu didn't have prices, it just had descriptions. Deconstructed scallop foam. Essence of beetroot. I missed the oak barrel so much I ached. Rachel, however, didn't even look at the menu. She sat down, and the first thing she did was slide her phone out of her purse and place it in her lap screen up beneath the edge of the table. The distraction continued. "We should order the tasting menu, Dad. Grant says the chef here is a genius. He trained in somewhere in Europe. Spain, I think." "That's nice, sweetheart." I watched her hands. Her thumb swiped, checking messages, waiting for a text. I pictured Grant and his father Simon at my house right now. Were they drilling the lock? Was the alarm going off? I had set that system up myself, wired it directly to the local police dispatch. Grant didn't know that. A young waiter appeared. Rachel ordered a bottle of wine, the most expensive one naturally, and that deconstructed nonsense. I just asked for water. "Just water, Dad," she asked, her concern painted on. "Are you feeling okay?" "Just thirsty," I said. The waiter left. The music pounded. Rachel kept glancing at her lap. Her leg was bouncing under the table. Thump, thump, thump. Then the conversation stopped. The frantic energy she had used to chatter about the weather suddenly vanished. She put her phone face down on the table, a deliberate, practiced move. She was changing tactics. She leaned forward, her expression shifting to one of deep, profound concern. This was the real performance. "Dad," she started, her voice now soft and serious. I've been really worried about you." I just looked at her. "No, really?" She insisted, placing her hand on her chest. "Ever since Mom, well, you're all alone in that huge house. It's just so big for one person, isn't it?" There it was, the bait. "It's quiet," I said, my voice rough. "It's empty, Dad. That's what it is. And Mom wouldn't want you rattling around in that empty place all alone. She would want you to be safe. She would want you to be taken care of." She used Clara. She used the memory of my wife as a crowbar to pry me from my home. The anger was so hot, so sudden, I almost choked on it. I had to clench my fists under the table to stop my hands from shaking. I looked down at my water glass. "It's empty," I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. "But it's my home. It's where it's where it's all I have left of her." I let a little tremor enter my voice. I let her see the grieving old man she and Grant had whispered about. It worked. She saw the opening and she took it. She leaned in closer, grabbing my hand across the table. Her grip wasn't gentle. It was possessive. Her nails dug slightly into my skin. "But maybe it's time, Dad," she whispered, her eyes shining with a predatory light I'd never seen before. "To think about downsizing." She squeezed my hand. Maybe it's time you moved in with us. We have that lovely guest room downstairs. You wouldn't have to worry about anything. No maintenance, no empty rooms. We could take care of you." This was it. This was the play. It wasn't just a suggestion. It was the sales pitch. They weren't just changing the locks. They were planning to move me out. I looked at her hand on mine, then up at her hopeful, greedy face. And I knew Grant must have texted. He must have given her the all clear. They thought they had already won. I looked at her hand, this hand that I used to hold when she was a little girl crossing the street. Now it felt like a trap. I let my own hand go limp, playing the part of the defeated old man. "Move in with you," I said, my voice just a low murmur. "Oh, Rachel, that's a big step. I don't know." She squeezed my hand harder. "Just think about it, Dad. No more worries. No more big empty house, just family." Right then, as if summoned by the devil himself, her phone, which was still face down on the table, began to vibrate. It wasn't just a quiet buzz. It was an angry rattling sound that made the water in my glass tremble. Rachel's smile didn't just fade. It shattered. She stared at the phone as if it were a snake. The caller ID must have been Grant's. The pounding music of the restaurant seemed to fade away. All I could hear was that insistent, desperate buzzing. Psst, psst, psst. She couldn't ignore this one. This wasn't a simple text. This was panic. She grabbed the phone, her movements jerky. "Oh, for—" She fumbled the phone, almost dropping it. She glanced at me, her eyes wide with forced apology. "Dad, I am so sorry," she said, her voice suddenly high and tight. It's my boss, Mr. Henderson. He never calls after hours. This must be an emergency. I have to take this. I'll be right back." She lied. She lied again, so easily. It wasn't Mr. Henderson. It was Grant. I knew it. She knew No, she assumed I didn't know. She shot up from the table, knocking her chair back slightly, and practically ran toward the restaurant's lobby, past the fake waterfall, and toward the restrooms. I waited. 1 beat, 2 beats. I wasn't born yesterday. I didn't build a contracting empire from scratch by being a fool. And I certainly wasn't going to sit there like a lamb while the wolves decided how to carve me up. I slowly pushed my chair back, my movements careful, making a show of bracing my hands on my knees, as if the effort to stand was a challenge. "Ah," I grunted softly. "All this excitement. I think I need to use the men's room." I shuffled my feet, acting every one of my 70 years, and headed in the same direction Rachel had gone. The lobby was slightly quieter than the main dining room. The heavy thumping music was muffled by glass doors. I saw the signs for the restrooms down a short hallway, but I didn't go there. I saw Rachel. She wasn't in the hallway. She had pushed through a side door into a small dark alcove meant for waiters right next to a large potted palm tree. She was pacing back and forth in the shadows, her back to me. She had the phone pressed to her ear so hard her knuckles were white. I stepped back, positioning myself behind a large decorative stone pillar. I was just another shadow in the dimly lit lobby. And I listened. I only heard her side of the conversation, but it was more than enough. "Grant, what is wrong with you?" she hissed into the phone. Her voice was no longer the sweet, concerned daughter. It was sharp, cold, and terrified. "What do you mean you can't get in? I gave you the code, the old one." She paused, listening. Her whole body was rigid. "What do you mean it's not working? Did you try the back door? I told you he leaves the key." Another pause, longer this time. "What?" she shrieked, then quickly lowered her voice, looking around frantically. "What do you mean the system is new? You said you checked it last week. You said this would be easy." She was almost vibrating with fury. She gripped the phone with both hands. "So break it, Grant. Just break the damn door down. What is Simon doing? Isn't he the locksmith? Tell him to drill the lock. I don't care. Just get it done." I watched her listen again. Her face, even in the dim light, was a mask of disbelief. The color drained from her cheeks until she was as pale as marble. "What?" she whispered. She put her hand against the wall to steady herself. "What do you mean?" "Trapped." She looked at her phone, then put it back to her ear. Her voice now a terrified, trembling whisper that I could barely hear. "What the hell are you talking about, Grant?" Her terrified whisper was still hanging in the air when the main doors of the restaurant burst open. They didn't just open. They slammed against the interior walls with a crash that cut through the pounding music. The entire restaurant, a sea of shouting young people and clinking glasses, fell silent for a half-second. I saw him first. It was Grant. But this wasn't the slick, confident son-in-law who had left my house an hour ago waving his phone and talking about the Apex deal. This was a different man. His face was the color of chalk, gleaming with a layer of cold sweat under the restaurant's ridiculous purple lights. His $800 suit jacket was twisted. His tie was pulled loose, his top button undone. He looked like he'd just run a marathon. He didn't see me. He didn't see our table. His eyes were wide, scanning the room with pure animal panic. Sir, you can't," the young hostess said, trying to intercept him. He shoved right past her. He didn't push her, but he moved through her path as if she were a ghost, his eyes locked on the alcove where Rachel was hiding. He stumbled past the indoor waterfall, his expensive shoes slipping on the damp tile, and lunged toward the potted palm. Rachel was still on the phone, her back to the room. "Grant, answer me. What do you mean?" "Rachel," he gasped. She spun around, dropping the phone. It hit the floor with a clatter. "Grant, what are you doing here? What happened?" He grabbed her by the arms. His knuckles were white. He was panting, his chest heaving so hard he could barely speak. "It's bad," he wheezed, shaking his head. "Rachel, it's bad. Something went wrong. It went horribly wrong." I watched them from behind the pillar. Two conspirators, their perfect plan dissolving into chaos. Rachel's eyes were frantic. She grabbed the front of his shirt. "What did you do? Did you get the locks changed? Is it done?" Grant shook his head, his eyes squeezed shut, as if he was in physical pain. "No!" he practically shouted, his voice cracking and high-pitched. "I couldn't. The code," and it didn't work. "The system. It's not what we thought." "What about Simon?" Rachel hissed, shaking him. "What about your father? He's the locksmith." "Tell him to drill it. I told you to just break the door down." "I can't," Grant wailed. He finally opened his eyes, and what I saw in them was pure, undiluted terror. Rachel, he's what?" Grant spit it out. "He's trapped." Grant finally yelled the word tearing out of his throat. "The locksmith, Simon, my dad, he's trapped inside the house. The new security system. It locked him in, the alarms are going off. The cops are on their way." That was it. That was the moment. The final piece of the puzzle slotted into place. They weren't just checking locks. They were actively breaking in. And they had failed so spectacularly they had managed to get Grant's own father arrested in the process. I stepped out from behind the stone pillar. I didn't rush. I didn't run. I just walked calmly out of the shadows, my old work boots making no sound on the polished floor. I stepped into the narrow entrance of the alcove, blocking their only exit. I said nothing. I just stood there, letting them see me. Rachel was the first to notice. Her frantic questions to Grant died in her throat. Her hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes widened until I thought they would pop from her head. Grant, seeing the look of horror on his wife's face, spun around. His mouth fell open. The color, what little he had left, drained from his face. They both just stared. If I had risen from the dead right there in the middle of that tacky restaurant lobby, they could not have looked more terrified. They weren't just caught. They were caught by the confused old man they thought was safely 2 miles away, being distracted by deconstructed scallops. They knew. In that one silent, terrible moment, they knew that I knew. I stepped out from behind the pillar. The world seemed to lurch into focus. Their faces frozen in a silent scream of discovery were lit by the tacky purple glow of the indoor waterfall. They looked like criminals caught in a spotlight. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. I let the cold fury do the work. "My father?" I asked. My voice cut through their panic like a razor. Grant just stared at me, his mouth opening and closing, making no sound. My father, Grant, I repeated, taking one slow, deliberate step toward him, has been dead for 30 years. He's buried in the plot right next to Clara. I let that sink in. So I want you to explain to me very clearly what in God's name you are talking about. Rachel made a small strangled sound like a dying animal. Dad, you don't understand. No! Grant suddenly yelled, finding his voice. It was a desperate cracking shriek that turned the heads of the hostess and a few people in the lobby. No, not your father, my father, Simon, my dad, Simon. He's trapped. Trapped where, Grant? I asked, keeping my voice dangerously calm. At your house. He stammered, the words tumbling out in a frantic rush. He was helping me with the locks. The locks. I pressed, relentless. I thought you were checking the locks at your house. That's what Rachel said. No. Yes, I lied, he finally admitted. The confession burst out of him, sweaty and desperate. I was trying to surprise you. For your birthday, a gift I was upgrading your security system. Rachel, seeing the new lie, grabbed onto it like a drowning woman seizing a piece of driftwood. Yes, a gift, she chimed in, her voice unnaturally high. Grant was installing a new top-of-the-line system for you, Dad. To keep you safe, he wanted it to be a surprise. A surprise. They were breaking into my house with a locksmith as a surprise. The sheer breathtaking audacity of it almost made me laugh. So, I said, my voice flat, you hired your father, a locksmith, to break into my house as a gift. No, not break in, Grant yelled, rubbing his hands violently over his face, smearing the sweat. I was just replacing the locks and the damn system I installed last week. It malfunctioned. I froze. The system I installed last week. That was the key. A security system he installed last week. I had never authorized a new system. I didn't need one. My house was a fortress. I built it myself, solid brick walls, reinforced steel door frames, and half-inch deadbolts that I installed with my own hands 30 years ago. The system Clara and I had was simple, hardwired, and reliable. It worked perfectly. Why would he install a new one unless he needed administrative control? Unless he needed a way to lock me out, not lock others in? And now, in a perfect twist of fate, his own father was the first victim of his high-tech, unauthorized trap. It locked him in. Grant was almost sobbing now. He's inside and the alarms are going off, the silent alarm. It went straight to the police. They're coming. They're going to think he's a burglar. They're going to arrest him. He grabbed my arm. His grip wasn't threatening. It was desperate, like a child's. Dad, Owen, please, you have to come with us. You have to tell them it was a misunderstanding. Rachel was already running for the main doors, digging in her purse for her keys. Grant's right, Dad. We have to go. Now they're going to arrest Simon. Oh my God, this is a nightmare. They weren't worried about Simon. Not really. They were worried about themselves. They were worried about their entire pathetic plan being exposed by their own incompetence. They hustled me out of the restaurant, past the stunned hostess and the curious diners who were watching the drama unfold. We burst out into the cool night air. Grant didn't even wait for the valet. He sprinted down the ramp, yelling his ticket number, and threw a wad of cash at the attendant. He yanked open the back door of his BMW for me, almost pushing me inside like I was a sack of potatoes. Get in, Dad! Get in! He jumped into the driver's seat. Rachel dove into the passenger side, slamming the door. Drive, Grant! Just drive! She screamed. Grant slammed the car into gear, the tires squealing as he peeled out of the parking garage. He looked at me in the rearview mirror, his eyes wild with terror. Dad, please, he begged, his voice cracking. You have to tell them it was all your idea. You have to tell them you asked for the upgrade. If you don't, If you don't, they're going to arrest my father. Grant drove like his life depended on it, because I realized it probably did. He wasn't just speeding, he was fleeing. He ran a red light 2 blocks from the restaurant, earning a long, angry honk from a truck. "Grant, slow down, you're going to kill us," Rachel shrieked, bracing her hands against the dashboard. "I can't!" he yelled back, his voice cracking his eyes, darting between the road and the rearview mirror, as if he expected to be followed. "Don't you understand? My father is 72 years old. He has a heart condition. What if this kills him? We have to get there." A heart condition. I filed that little fact away. It was another layer of manipulation, another lever for him to pull. He wasn't worried about Simon's heart. He was worried about what Simon, cornered and humiliated, would say to the police. I remained completely silent in the back seat. I was no longer a father-in-law. I was a hostage. I was the key to their entire pathetic charade. They needed me. They needed the confused old man to show up and save them. We heard the sirens before we saw the lights. 2 blocks from my street, the night sky was flashing alive and pulsing. It wasn't just one police car. It looked like the entire district precinct was parked on my lawn. Red and blue lights flashed in a frantic, silent rhythm, painting the fronts of my neighbors' houses in strobing, nightmarish colors. Grant slammed on the brakes, pulling the BMW halfway onto the curb, blocking a fire truck. A fireman in full gear immediately started yelling at him to move the vehicle. "Oh my God," Rachel whispered, her hand covering her mouth. "Oh my God. Grant, look at this." It was a circus. My quiet, peaceful street, the one Clara and I had cherished for its tranquility, was a public spectacle. Neighbors I had known for 40 years were standing on their lawns in bathrobes and slippers, their arms crossed, watching. Mrs. Henderson, from 2 doors down, the neighborhood's chief information officer, looked like she was memorizing every detail for her morning report. And there, in the center of it all, illuminated by the flashing lights on my front lawn, was Simon. He wasn't in handcuffs. Not yet. He was sitting on the edge of an ambulance bumper, a silver Mylar shock blanket wrapped around his shoulders. He looked small, pale, and utterly pathetic. An EMT was strapping a blood pressure cuff to his arm. Simon, a man I'd always known to be proud, almost arrogant, was visibly trembling. He kept his eyes fixed on the pavement, refusing to look at the circus his son had created. He looked ashamed. Grant, Rachel, and I scrambled out of the car. In that instant, every head on the street turned in unison. I could feel their eyes on me. The poor old widower, Owen. What trouble had he gotten himself into now? A police officer built like a refrigerator saw us approaching and immediately walked over. His hand was resting on his holstered weapon, and his expression was one of absolute zero patience. His name tag read, Kowalski. "Who are you people?" he barked, shining a blinding flashlight directly in Grant's face. This is his house," Grant stammered frantically, pointing at me. "This is Owen Mitchell. I'm his son-in-law, Grant. This is my wife, Rachel. We were at dinner with him." Kowalski turned the heavy beam on me. I blinked, raising a hand to shield my eyes. "You're Mr. Mitchell. You live here." "I am," I said, my voice steady. "What in the world happened here, officer? What happened?" Kowalski said, his voice dripping with suspicion. "Is that we got a high-priority silent alarm from this address. Class 1 automated burglary in progress. We arrive and the house is locked up tighter than a drum. We hear a man inside yelling that he's trapped. We had to breach your back door." He jerked his thumb toward Simon, who flinched at the sound of the officer's voice. "We found him," Kowalski said, "stuck in the main hallway. He claims—" The officer paused to check his notepad. "He's your father-in-law's father." He looked at Grant. "That's your dad." Yes, yes," Grant said, his voice high-pitched. "It's all a terrible misunderstanding." Kowalski ignored him. His eyes were locked on me. He was analyzing me, the confused old man in the nice coat. Mr. Mitchell, your relative, claims he was here at your request. He said you called him to check on a gas leak. I saw the lie. The desperate, clumsy, idiotic lie. A gas leak. The officer continued, his eyes narrowing. Which is funny, because when we arrived, your brand new top-of-the-line Fortress security system was blaring. The one that, according to our dispatch, was just installed last week. And it wasn't a gas alarm, sir. It was a tamper alarm. Someone tried to bypass the main sensors and the system locked down. Locked him right inside. Seems it's a very good system. Kowalski shined the light back on my face full beam. So, Mr. Mitchell, I need a clear answer. Did you or did you not ask this man to come here tonight to check on a gas leak? This was it. The moment of truth. I looked past the officer's broad shoulder. I saw Simon trembling on the bumper, finally looking up at me with pleading, terrified eyes. I looked at Grant, who was mouthing the word please at me, his face a mask of desperation. And I looked at Rachel, my daughter, my only child. Her face was streaked with tears, her hands clasped together as if in prayer, silently begging me to save them. They had lied to me. They had plotted against me. They had tried to steal my home. I had two choices. I could tell the truth. Right here, right now. I could say, no, officer, I've never seen that man before in my life. I could send Simon to jail and watch their entire scheme unravel on my front lawn in front of the whole neighborhood. Or I could play their game. I held the silence for 1 second longer. I looked at Officer Kowalski. I let my shoulders slump. I took a deep, shaky breath, letting my hands tremble. I looked at the ground, the very picture of a confused, grieving widower. I held the silence. I let Officer Kowalski's flashlight bore into me. I could feel the weight of his suspicion, the impatience radiating off him in waves. Beside me, I heard Grant make a tiny choked sound, a suppressed whimper of pure panic. Rachel was holding her breath so hard, I thought she might pass out. This was the pivot. The entire future, mine and theirs, balanced on the head of this single pin. I took a shaky breath. I let my shoulders slump, pulling my wool coat tighter around me, as if I were cold, as if I were just a frail old man, overwhelmed by the flashing lights and the shouting. Officer, I began, my voice intentionally weak and reedy. Officer, oh my goodness. This is all my fault. Kowalski's expression didn't change, but his head tilted slightly. Your fault, Mr. Mitchell? Yes, I said, rubbing my temples. My memory, ever since my wife Clara passed, it's like a sieve. I looked toward Simon, who was still staring at me, his eyes wide with a desperate plea. The gas leak, I said, snapping my fingers as if the memory had just struggled to the surface. Oh dear Lord, that's right. The gas leak. I looked at Grant, my eyes wide with feigned realization. Grant, you were right. I did ask you to check it. I smelled gas near the furnace this morning. Or was it yesterday? I looked back at the officer, my face a perfect mask of bewildered embarrassment. I completely forgot. I'm so sorry. Grant jumped on the opening I gave him. See, officer, I told you my father-in-law asked me to check it. I couldn't come, so I sent my own father, Simon. He's a professional. I must have given him the wrong disarm code for the new system. The new system, Kowalski asked, his eyes narrowing again. Yes. I jumped in before Grant could. This Fortress thing. I waved a trembling hand at my house. My son-in-law, I said, gesturing to Grant. He's been so worried about me being alone. He installed it just last week. It's very complicated. Too many buttons. It must be, you said it was sensitive. It's a high-end system, sir. It locks down on a tamper attempt. Kowalski said, his tone softening just a fraction, from suspicious to annoyed. A tamper attempt. I said, letting my voice rise in false indignation. Simon wasn't tampering. He was just trying to get in to check the gas, just like I asked. Oh, this is dreadful. Simon, are you all right? I shuffled past the officer, ignoring him for a moment, and went to the ambulance bumper. Simon looked up at me, his face a mixture of profound relief and utter humiliation. I'm fine, Owen. Just a bit shaken. The alarm, it was so loud inside. I am so sorry, I said, patting his arm. My fault. All my fault. I turned back to Officer Kowalski. So you see, officer, it was just a terrible mix-up. An old man's faulty memory and a new overly sensitive alarm. I feel just awful for wasting your time. Kowalski sighed, a long, deep, exasperated sound. He finally clicked off his flashlight. The sudden darkness was a relief. He put his notepad away. Mr. Mitchell, he said, and I could hear the exhaustion in his voice. Next time you think you smell gas, you call 911. You let the fire department handle it. And before you have family come over to fix things, make sure you write down the correct alarm code for them. You're lucky your relative didn't get hurt. Or worse. I will, officer. I promise. Thank you, I said, my voice full of gratitude. He nodded curtly. All right. We're clear here. We'll have the fire department finish their sweep, and then you can all go back to whatever you were doing. He turned and walked away, signaling to his fellow officers. The show was over. The moment he was out of earshot, I heard 3 distinct simultaneous sounds, the whoosh of air as Grant, Rachel, and Simon all exhaled the breath they had been holding for the last 5 minutes. It was the sound of victory, their victory. Rachel rushed over and threw her arms around me. Oh, Dad, you were wonderful, thank you. Thank you. She was crying real tears, now tears of pure, unadulterated relief. Grant came up, his false bravado returning, and clapped me hard on the shoulder. Whew, that was close, huh? See, Dad, just like I said, a misunderstanding. He leaned in, his voice dropping. It was that new system. Must be a glitch in the sensors. I'll call the company tomorrow and have them fix it. He was still lying right to my face even after all this. He was blaming a glitch for a trap he had set. They thought I had believed them. They thought I had saved them because I was a confused, senile old man who had genuinely forgotten. They had no idea I had saved them because I needed them to keep thinking I was a confused, senile old man. I pulled away from Rachel's hug, letting my body sag with fake exhaustion. Oh my, I said, wiping my brow. That was too much for me. All those lights, the neighbors. I know, Dad. I know, Rachel said, stroking my arm. Let's get you inside. No, I said, shaking my head. I looked at the house. The back door was probably splintered from where the police had breached it. No, I don't want to be here tonight. This was too much. I looked at them, my eyes wide and tired. Rachel, you know, I think you were right. This house, it's just too much. I need a break. Grant and Rachel exchanged a look. I could see the gears turning in their heads. This was their opening bigger than they could have hoped. What do you mean, Dad? Rachel asked, her voice soft. The fishing trip, I said. I was planning to go next week, but I think I'll go now, tonight, or first thing in the morning. I looked up at them. I need to get away. I think I'll go up to the lake for a few weeks just to clear my head. The sun wasn't even fully up. It was just a weak gray light filtering through the blinds, but Rachel and Grant were already at my door. 8 a.m. They were eager. Dad? You're up, Rachel chirped, her voice a little too bright. She was carrying a thermos. I made you coffee for the drive. Extra sweet, just how you like it. I never took my coffee sweet. Clara knew that. Rachel had forgotten. Or perhaps she never knew at all. Thank you, sweetheart, I mumbled, taking the thermos. Grant was already in the driveway, standing by my old Ford F-150. He was loading my fishing gear, the rods, the tackle box, the cooler. He was handling them roughly, just cargo to be moved. I winced as he tossed my father's favorite reel into the truck bed. "Got you all packed up, Owen," he called out, wiping his hands on his expensive slacks. "You'll be on the lake before noon." Their relief was palpable. It stank of opportunity. They couldn't wait to get rid of me. They were practically vibrating with the need to have me gone. They saw me as the final obstacle. Last night I had been their savior, the confused old man who cleared their names with the police. Today I was the senile fool who was conveniently removing himself from the board so they could make their next move. I just need some peace," I said, leaning heavily on the truck door. I let my voice waver. After last night, all those sirens, it was too much. Rachel rushed over, her face a perfect mask of daughterly concern. "I know, Dad. I know. It was terrifying. That's why this is such a good idea." She patted my arm. "You just go. Don't worry about anything here. Grant and I we'll handle the house. We'll get that security system fixed. We'll take care of everything. You just rest." "I'll bet you will," I thought. "Thank you, Rachel. You're a good daughter," I said. It felt like ash in my mouth. I climbed into the driver's seat. It felt strange. This was the truck I'd used for my contracting business for 20 years. The cab smelled of sawdust metal and old coffee. It smelled of work. Of me. "You'll call us when you get there?" Rachel asked, hovering by the window. "Oh. You know the reception up at the lake is terrible," I said, starting the engine. "I'll probably just unplug for a while. Don't you worry about me." "But Dad..." "I'll be fine, Rachel. I just need to be alone." I saw the look that passed between her and Grant. It was perfect. "Don't worry about me." It was exactly what they wanted to hear. "Okay, Dad," she said, stepping back, her smile bright and triumphant. "Be safe. We love you." "I love you too," I said. I put the truck in gear and pulled away from the curb. I looked in the rearview mirror. They stood on the sidewalk in front of my house watching me leave. They didn't go inside. They just stood there watching until I turned the corner, ensuring I was truly gone. The moment my truck disappeared, I saw Grant pull out his phone and pump his fist in the air. I drove for about 10 miles heading north toward the interstate just in case they were following. They weren't. They were too arrogant, too sure of themselves. At the next exit, I pulled off the highway. I drove through the sleepy downtown streets until I reached the industrial park on the south side of town. The part of town they never visited. I wasn't going to the lake. I wasn't going fishing. I was going to war. I pulled into the gravel lot of Mitchell Construction. The sign was faded. I'd built the business from nothing, just 2 hands and a toolbox. I hadn't officially retired, not really. I'd just stopped. When Clara got sick, I handed the day-to-day operations over to my foreman. I hadn't been back in 6 months. I parked the truck and walked into the cavernous workshop. The smell of welding ozone motor oil and fresh-cut lumber hit me. It felt more like home than my actual house did right now. In the back office, sitting behind a desk covered in blueprints and 3 different computer monitors, was Milo. Milo Petrucci. He's 68 years old, built like a fire hydrant with hands like leather-bound bricks. He'd been my first ever hire 45 years ago. He was more than my foreman. He was the brother I never had. He was the one who sat with me in the hospital waiting room the night Clara was diagnosed. He was the one who helped me carry her casket. He was family in a way my own blood daughter no longer seemed to be. And he was secretly a complete computer genius. He built his own servers. He could probably hack the Pentagon if he was bored. He looked up from his screen, his reading glasses perched on his nose. He saw me and his gruff expression broke into a rare, wide smile. Owen, what the hell are you doing here? I thought you were, you know, grieving. I said, closing the office door behind me. I dropped my fishing trip lie. Now I'm just angry. His smile faded. He took off his glasses. What's wrong? What did those two jackals do now? Milo never trusted Grant. He called him the Gucci suit. He said a man who never got his hands dirty couldn't be trusted. How right he was. I sat down in the old wooden chair opposite his desk. It squeaked under my weight, the same squeak it had for 20 years. Milo, I said, my voice low and hard. They think I'm senile. They think I'm a lamb cam. A confused old fool. You, Milo snorted. You're the sharpest man I know. What is this about? They're trying to take my house, Milo, right now, while they think I'm off fishing. Milo's face darkened. He didn't question me. He just nodded his loyalty absolute. He turned to his main monitor and cracked his knuckles. Who do I need to find, boss? Everyone, I said. Start with Grant, his company, his debts, and I want to know about something called Apex Holdings. And Milo, I need you to find out everything you can about the new security system he installed at my house. Milo's face was a mask of cold fury. He leaned back in his ancient squeaking office chair and crossed his massive arms. A confused old fool, you. He snorted a sound like gravel turning in a cement mixer. Those goddamn vultures. I never liked him, Owen. I told you that. I told you he had weak eyes. You did, Milo. You did. I sat down, the familiar squeak of the visitor's chair, a strange comfort. But he's not just weak. He's desperate. And he's stupid. He tried to have his own father break into my house last night, and they got caught. Milo's eyebrows shot up. What, you're kidding me? Kidding. I wish I was. They got trapped by a new security system. Grant's excuse, I said, leaning forward, is that he installed it for me last week as a surprise gift. He said it malfunctioned. Bullshit, Milo spat. You don't just install a system like that. Those things are locked down. You need authorization. You need passwords. Exactly, I said. That's what I need you to find first. The system was called Fortress Security. Grant said he installed it last week. I want to know who paid for it. I want to know who authorized the installation. And Milo, I want every log, every keystroke, every access attempt. I want to know exactly what they were doing at my house last night. Milo didn't say another word. He just turned to his main monitor. His setup looked ancient, a mismatched collection of computer cases and monitors from different decades, but I knew what was inside those machines. He built them himself. They were faster and more powerful than anything Grant could buy at a big box store. His thick, calloused fingers, the same fingers that could field strip a diesel engine, in 20 minutes flew across the keyboard with a speed that always amazed me. The only sound in the office for the next few minutes was the rapid clack, clack, clack of the keys and the hum of the servers stacked in the corner. Fortress Security, he muttered to himself, his eyes scanning the screen. Okay, they're a big-time national outfit, based out of Atlanta, top-of-the-line gear, not cheap. He wouldn't spare any expense, I said bitterly. Not when he's spending my money. You got that right, Milo grunted. Okay, I'm in their commercial accounts portal. This is sloppy work, Grant. He used his own name for the service inquiry. What an amateur. I watched the screen, though I couldn't follow what he was doing. He had 3 different windows, open lines of code scrolling past. Got it, he said, his voice hardening. Here's the work order, installation at your address. Date, 8 days ago, just like he said. Premium home protection package. Cost, $4,000. Paid by one guess, Milo said. He clicked and a digital receipt appeared. Billed to a corporate card. Apex Holdings. My blood ran cold. Apex. He used the company card. He's arrogant, Milo said. Or stupid, probably both. He kept digging, his brow furrowed. Okay, so he paid for it. But he can't just order and install at a property he doesn't own. He would need, here it is, the authorization form. The work can't start until the legal homeowner signs off. He couldn't have, I said. I was home all last week. No one came to me with a paper. He didn't need paper, Owen. Milo's voice went quiet. He stopped typing. He just stared at the screen. What is it, Milo? What do you see? He turned the monitor toward me. It was a digital form, a PDF filled out with all my information. My name, my address, my date of birth, my social security number. Dear God, how did he get my social? And there at the bottom in a box marked homeowner signature was my name. It was my signature. The same way I'd signed checks for 40 years. That familiar looping O and the sharp M. It was perfect. Milo, I whispered, he must have practiced, copied it from a check. He didn't have to, Milo said, his voice grim. He pointed to a line of text at the very bottom of the document. See that signed via secured e-portal? This wasn't a scan. It was a digital signature. I don't understand, I said. I've never used a digital signature in my life. I don't even know what that is. I know you don't, Milo said. He typed a few more commands. Another window popped up, a list of account numbers. He didn't use your digital signature, Owen. He used your power of attorney. I stared at him confused. The POA, but that was for Clara, for the hospital, for her medical decisions. The one you signed when she got sick, Milo confirmed, his voice flat. The one that gave Grant as your secondary power over your financial and medical decisions if you were incapacitated. You never revoked it after she passed, did you? My stomach turned to lead. No, I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. I forgot. I forgot. He didn't, Milo said. He used that power of attorney to create a legal binding digital signature in your name. Then he used that signature to authorize the installation of the security system he wanted at your house. I stood up. I had to walk away. I paced to the small, grimy window of the office, looking out at the gravel lot. He had used my grief. He had used the moment of my deepest despair, the moment I was trying to save my wife, as a weapon against me. He had been planning this for months. So, I said, my back to him. He has a POA. He can sign as me. He can do anything. Not exactly, Milo said. The POA is for incapacitation. You're standing right here. It's fraudulent use. But the signature, it's legally yours. He authorized the system. I turned back to him, the anger now a cold, hard stone in my gut. I never signed that POA, Milo. Milo looked confused. What, Owen? I was there. I drove you to the lawyer's office. You signed it the day Clara went into the ICU. I signed a medical power of attorney, Milo, I said, my voice shaking. I remember. The lawyer, that cheap lawyer Grant recommended. He told me it was only for making medical decisions if Clara and I were both unable. I looked at Milo. I never ever would have signed a financial POA. Not over to him. Not in a million years. Milo's eyes went wide. He turned back to the keyboard, his fingers flying. Owen, if that's true... He pulled up the digital authorization from the security company again. Then he pulled up another file. It was a scanned document. It was the power of attorney. There's your signature, Milo said. He zoomed in. And there, he pointed to the fine print on page 3, is the financial clause. Full authority over all banking trusts and real estate. It wasn't just medical, Owen. It was everything. I stared at the page. I remembered that day. The smell of the hospital, the blur of tears, Grant pushing papers in front of me saying, "Just sign here, Dad. It's for the doctors." And I signed. I signed without reading. I signed because my world was ending. He tricked me, I whispered. That son of a bitch, he tricked me while my wife was dying. Yes, Milo said, his voice a low growl. He did. He looked up at me, his eyes dark. This isn't just about a house anymore, Owen. This is fraud. This is elder abuse. This is a felony. I looked at the signature. My signature. On a document I never agreed to. He didn't just forge my name, Milo, I said. He forged my trust. Milo nodded. He did. And now we know how he did it. The next question is, why? He tricked me, I whispered the words thick with bile. He tricked me while my wife was dying. Milo's face was a block of granite. He just nodded, his own anger simmering beneath the surface. Yes, he did, Owen. He used that fraudulent POA to authorize the system. That was step one. But why? I asked, the fog of betrayal starting to clear, replaced by a cold, sharp-edged logic. Why did it fail? Grant said the system malfunctioned. He said it was a glitch that trapped his father. Let's find out, Milo said, his voice a low growl. He turned back to the keyboard, his fingers moving again. If he installed it, he created the logs. And if he created the logs, I can find them. You asked why it locked his father in. I bet you won't like the answer. I watched him pull up a new window on his main monitor. It looked different from the billing portal. It was a simple black screen with lines of white and green text. Timestamps, IP addresses, command prompts. This is it, Milo said. The Fortress system's internal server log. Every command, every button press, every error, all recorded. He scrolled down the page, his eyes scanning the lines of code. Here we go, he said, stopping. He pointed a thick finger at the screen. Last night, your birthday, 9:05 p.m. I leaned in. I didn't understand the code, but I understood the words. 9:05:14 p.m. Login attempt, user Grant. Access level admin. Password. Result failed. 9:06:22 p.m. login. Attempt user Grant. Access level admin. Password. Result failed. 9:07:01 p.m. login. Attempt user Simon. Access level admin. Password. Result failed. They were trying to log in, I said. So what? They forgot the password. No, Owen. Look what they were trying to log into, Milo said. He highlighted the line access level admin. They weren't trying to use the system, Milo explained, his voice flat. They weren't trying to arm or disarm it. They were trying to access the administrative controls. They were trying to get into the core programming. In English, Milo, what does that mean? Milo turned his chair to look me dead in the eye. It means they were trying to delete you, Owen. They were trying to change the master admin rights, erase your credentials, and assign full control to user Grant. The surprise wasn't a new system. The plan was for you to come home from your fishing trip, find your key didn't work, find your old alarm code was useless, and discover you were locked out of your own home permanently. They were staging a digital coup. I gripped the arms of the old wooden chair. Locked out. My own daughter. They were going to throw me out onto the street. But they failed, I said, the memory of Grant's panicked, sweaty face flashing in my mind. Why did they fail? Milo let out a short, harsh laugh. Because they're idiots, Owen. And because you built that house. He pointed back to the screen. This system is top of the line. It has 2 connection paths, the new fancy Wi-Fi module Grant installed, and the hard line, the old-school Ethernet cable. Remember that Cat5 cable you ran to the attic back in '98? The one you said was just in case. The backup line, I whispered. I never disconnected it. It's wired right into the main junction box. Well, the Fortress system found it and linked to it as a primary failsafe. Grant and Simon, they were trying to hack it through the Wi-Fi. They were using their passwords. Grant123, password, admin, Apex1. But they couldn't get master control because the system kept defaulting to the hardline. Milo leaned in, his eyes gleaming. And the hardline, Owen, it still had your original admin password, the one only you would know. It hit me. Clara's birthday, I said, the words catching in my throat. Clara's birthday, Milo confirmed. They tried 10 different variations of their own names. They never once thought to try hers. He scrolled to the bottom of the log. And here's the kicker. 9:15:32 p.m. Admin login failure threshold exceeded. System lockdown protocol initiated. All external access denied. All internal locks engaged. Silent alarm triggered, police dispatch 911. Milo spun back around, a grim, triumphant smile on his face. They didn't just fail Owen. They trapped themselves. The system did exactly what it was designed to do. It identified a hostile takeover attempt, and it locked the burglar in the hallway until the cops arrived. Grant was right about one thing. It wasn't a glitch. The system wasn't faulty. It worked perfectly. I sat back, the terrible, beautiful irony of it settling over me. They were brought down by their own greed and their own incompetence. Signature forgery, fraudulent power of attorney, a complex criminal conspiracy to steal my house. I looked at Milo. The final terrifying question hung in the air, heavier than the smell of oil and steel. But why Milo? I asked. Why all this? Why the desperation? The house is worth $2 million. Maybe. They'd get it eventually when I'm gone. Why risk prison? Why do all this right now? Milo's dark smile faded. He turned back to his keyboard. That, he said, his voice low, is what we find out next. This was never just about the house, Owen. This is about something much bigger. He opened a new browser window. I'm starting with Apex Holdings. Why? I asked again, the word hanging heavy in the dusty office air. Why now, Milo? I started pacing, the adrenaline from the discovery turning into a restless, burning energy. Think about it. The house is worth $2 million, maybe 2.5 on a good day. I'm 70 years old. I'm not going to live forever. Milo grunted, his eyes already scanning a new set of search results for Apex Holdings. They could have just waited, I said, the thought twisting in my gut. They'd get it eventually. Rachel is my only child. Why risk prison? Why go through this insane, complicated, stupid plan to steal something that would have been theirs anyway? Why the rush? Milo stopped typing and looked at me. Because they're not waiting for $2 million, Owen. They need something now. I ran my hands through my thin gray hair. They always need something. That's the story of their lives. I thought back. I thought about all the checks I'd written, all the emergencies I'd funded. As Milo's keyboard started clacking again, the memories flooded back, tasting like acid. I remembered 2 years ago, just a few months after Clara's first diagnosis, when my world was already tilting on its axis. Grant and Rachel had shown up at the house. Not just sad, they were devastated. Rachel was in tears, her face puffy. Grant looked broken. He told me his startup, his brilliant new tech venture, had crashed. He said he'd been defrauded by his partners. He said he owed money, dangerous money. He needed $500,000 or they would be ruined. He said it with tears in his eyes. He begged me. And Rachel, my daughter. She held my hand and told me, "Please, Dad. He's a good man. He just trusted the wrong people. Don't let this destroy us." What was I supposed to do? My wife was in the next room just beginning chemotherapy. My daughter was hysterical. So I did it. I called my financial advisor. I liquidated half of my retirement fund. The money Clara and I had sworn we would use to see the world, to take that cruise to Alaska she always dreamed of. $500,000. Gone. I transferred it to Grant's account. I saved them. And what did they do with that second chance? A month later, they moved. They moved into a penthouse apartment downtown. The kind of place with glass walls and a doorman. They said it was a new start. I later found out I hadn't just paid off their debt. I had also paid the $100,000 down payment on that damn apartment. My sacrifices, my life's savings, they were just fuel for their lifestyle. And still, it wasn't enough. Apex Holdings, Milo muttered, pulling me from the memory. This is weird. It's a shell company, Owen. An LLC, formed 9 months ago. I can't see who owns it. It's buried under 2 other holding companies in Delaware. This is professional. This isn't Grant. He's not this smart. He's the chief financial officer, I said. He's a pawn, Milo corrected. He's the local face, but he's not the brain. Someone else is pulling these strings. But why your house? Why is your lot the target? I stopped pacing. Milo was right. It wasn't just about the house. It was about the land. My house sat on 2 acres. It was one of the original plots in Hillcrest before the area got trendy. It was prime. If it's about the land, I said, it's about the neighbors. I pulled out my old flip phone. Not a smartphone like Grant's, just a simple, reliable phone. I scrolled through the contacts. I hadn't called this number in almost a year, but I knew he'd pick up. Who are you calling? Milo asked. An old friend, I said. The phone rang 3 times, then a loud booming voice answered. Tom's Realty, you buying or selling? Hello, Tom, I said. It's Owen Mitchell. There was a half-second of silence, then a bellow of laughter. Owen, you old son of a gun, I thought you'd fallen off the face of the earth. How's Clara, is she? Oh, wait. Owen, I'm so sorry. I heard. My deepest condolences. I'm a damned fool. It's all right, Tom. Thank you. I said, the familiar ache returning for a moment. I'm just calling with a question if you have a minute. For you, Owen, I got all day. What's on your mind? Don't tell me you're finally selling that beautiful house of yours. My knuckles whitened on the phone. Something like that. I'm just curious. What's the market like in Hillcrest these days? I've been out of the loop. Tom laughed again, but this time it was the hungry laugh of a shark who smells blood in the water. Owen, what's the market like? Let me tell you, you didn't just call. You called at the exact right time. Your whole neighborhood isn't just on the market. It's exploding. You haven't heard about Rezoning 7, have you? I looked at Milo. His fingers were poised over the keyboard, ready. No, Tom, I said, my voice steady. Tell me about Rezoning 7. My knuckles were white on the receiver of my old flip phone. No, Tom, I said, my voice steady, betraying nothing. Tell me about Rezoning 7. I heard Tom let out a low whistle on the other end of the line. Owen. Where have you been? Up at the lake already? It's the only thing anyone in my business has talked about for 6 months. The city council just pushed it through last Tuesday. It was controversial. A lot of backroom deals, if you ask me. What kind of deals? I asked, watching Milo's fingers fly across the keyboard as he typed Rezoning 7 into his search bar. The big kind, Tom said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial hush. They're rezoning that entire quadrant of Hillcrest, your neighborhood. It's no longer just residential. It's being reclassified for high-density commercial development. We're talking skyscrapers, Owen. A new corporate campus. My throat felt dry. A corporate campus. My quiet street. Clara's garden. But that's impossible, I stammered. The neighborhood association, Mrs. Henderson. They would never allow it. Tom let out a bitter laugh. The neighborhood association Owen they sold. All of them. They were bought out one by one over the last 8 months. All very quiet. All off-market deals. Mrs. Henderson sold 3 months ago for $5 million. Old man Peters, the one on the corner, he got 6. They all took the money and ran. All of them, I whispered. All of them, Tom confirmed. All, except one. The Keystone. The big one. The 2-acre plot right in the middle. He paused for dramatic effect. Your lot, Owen. You're the last holdout. I sank into the squeaky visitor's chair. I couldn't feel my legs. My lot. Owen, listen to me. Tom's voice was urgent now. There's a development firm, Apex Holdings. They're the ones behind it. They've consolidated the entire block. They have every single property, except yours. Without your 2 acres, their entire design fails. Your lot isn't just a part of their plan, Owen. It is the plan. It is the centerpiece. I thought about Grant and Rachel. Move in with us, Dad. We'll take care of you. The house is too big. They weren't trying to move me. They were trying to remove me. Tom, I said, my voice barely audible. What? What is it worth, my house? What is it really worth now? I heard him rustling papers. Look, your house, the structure. God bless Clara, it's beautiful, but it's worthless. They'll tear it down in 10 minutes. The land, Owen. The land is everything. Your $2 million lot. He paused again. Owen, the rumors on the street. The number I'm hearing. If you're the last piece of the puzzle, they're authorized to go as high as $20 million. The phone slipped. I fumbled at catching it just before it hit the floor. My hand was shaking so violently I could barely hold it. $20 million. Tom, I whispered, I have to go. Owen, wait, he yelled. If you're thinking of selling, you cannot talk to them without me. You need representation. Owen, don't you sign anything. I won't, I said. I'll call you back. I hung up the phone. I placed it on the desk, but my hand stayed there, frozen, resting on the receiver. $20 million. I stared at the wall. I saw Clara's face. I saw the day we poured the foundation. I saw Rachel on her tricycle on the sidewalk. I saw Grant, his face pale and sweaty, in the restaurant lobby, screaming about his father being trapped. It was never about the house. It was never about taking care of me. It wasn't even about the $2 million. It was about $20 million. This was the rush. This was the apex deal Grant was screaming about on the phone. He wasn't just on the deal. He was trying to steal the deal. From me. Milo? I said, my voice hoarse. I couldn't turn my head. I just stared at the wall. Milo, you heard him. The only sound in the office was the frantic clack, clack, clack of his keyboard. He hadn't stopped typing since the call began. Milo, I repeated louder this time. The typing stopped. The sudden silence was deafening. Boss, Milo said. His voice was strange. It wasn't angry anymore. It was hollow. It sounded like the voice of a man who had just looked into the abyss. I slowly turned my chair. Milo was staring at his main monitor. His face, usually so ruddy and full of life, was the color of ash. He looked pale. He looked sick. Boss, he whispered again, not looking at me. I found it. Apex Holdings. And I asked, my heart pounding a slow, heavy drumbeat. It's a Delaware LLC, just like I said, buried deep. But I found the incorporation papers, the registered agent. I found the executive board list. He finally turned his head. His eyes met mine, and in them I saw a terrible, sickening pity. You know anyone on this board of directors? Milo. What is it? Who is on that board? Milo swallowed a hard, slow movement in his thick neck. He looked as if he was about to deliver a death sentence, and in a way he was. It's not the board, Owen. The board members are just ghosts, lawyers registered in Delaware. It's the executive list, the officers, the people running Apex Holdings. Who? I demanded. My voice was a rasp. Milo took a deep breath. He didn't speak. He just turned his monitor so I could see it clearly. He pointed with one of his thick, calloused fingers, a finger that was shaking slightly, at the list of names. President. Vice President. And then the third name on the list. The Chief Financial Officer. Milo read his voice flat and dead. The man who signs the checks. The man who handles the money. He looked me straight in the eye. It's Grant. The name hung there in the dusty air of the workshop. Grant. My son-in-law. It wasn't a shock, not really. It was heavier than that. It was the final brutal piece of the puzzle slamming into place. It was the sound of a coffin lid closing. Grant, I repeated. The name tasted like ash. $20 million. Rezoning 7. Apex Holdings. The urgent phone call on my porch about the Apex deal. The fake startup. The $500,000 I gave him. My God. I sank back into the squeaky visitor's chair. He didn't lose my money. He used it. He used my retirement money, my $500,000, to fund this, to start Apex, to buy out my neighbors. It looks that way, Owen, Milo said grimly. He took your $500,000, and he's using it to leverage a $20 million steal from you. And Rachel, my daughter, my little girl. I'll distract him. You go change the locks. It all made sense now. The horrific, perfect, sickening sense of pure, calculated greed. They didn't just want the house. They needed the house. They needed it now. They're on a deadline, I said, the words coming out cold, and clipped the contractor in me analyzing the critical path. Tom said the deal just got pushed through. Apex has all the other lots, except mine. My lot is the centerpiece. Without my 2 acres, the whole $20 million campus fails. Milo nodded, his face dark. They can't wait for you to die, Owen. They can't risk you finding out from Tom or someone else. They need to secure the property before the deal closes and the price becomes public. So they install a new system, one they control. I continued, the coldness spreading from my gut to my fingertips. They get me out of the way with a fake fishing trip. They use Simon to change the locks. And when you come home, Milo finished, his voice a low growl, your key doesn't work. Your old alarm code is useless. They're inside. They tell you it's for your safety. They offer you a guest room. They pressure you. They tell you you're confused. And I'm locked out, I whispered. Homeless. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. Milo, the POA, the financial power of attorney he tricked me into signing. Milo's eyes widened in dawning horror. Owen. No. Yes. They don't even need me to sign the deed. Grant can sign it for me. He can legally sell my house right out from under me, and I can't do a damn thing to stop him. And Rachel. She was the linchpin. She was the one who could sell the story. The loving, grieving daughter forced to take control because her poor old father had lost his mind. They weren't just trying to steal my house. They were trying to steal my life, my identity, my sanity, all for $20 million. I looked at Milo. The fog of grief that had surrounded me for 6 long, dark months finally burned away. The sadness was gone. The confusion was gone. All that was left was a core of cold, hard diamond, pure, unadulterated rage. They thought I was a confused old fool. They thought I was a senile, grieving widower who could be pushed aside. They had used Clara's memory against me. They had used my love for my daughter against me. They had used my trust. They were about to find out how wrong they were. I picked up my old flip phone. I looked at Milo. "Milo," I said, and my voice was no longer weak. It was no longer the voice of a victim. It was the voice that had run construction crews for 40 years. It was the voice of a man who builds things and a man who knows better than anyone how to tear them down. "Call Ms. Diaz. Tell her it's an emergency." Milo grinned a slow, wolfish expression. "Ms. Diaz the shark. I like where this is going, boss." "Yes," I said, standing up. I felt steady for the first time in months. "Tell her to clear her schedule for tomorrow morning. It's time this confused old fool taught his children a lesson in respect." Milo's face was stone. "Boss, if what you're saying is true, if that POA is financial, they don't need to wait. They don't need your permission. Grant can sell that house right out from under you today." "No," I said, the coldness spreading. "He can't. Not yet. Clara and we set up the trust differently. It's complicated. He needs a second signature, or he needs me declared incompetent. They tried the incompetent route last night and it failed. They know they're running out of time before I find out why they're so desperate." "So what's the play?" Milo asked. "They think I'm a confused old fool at a fishing lake," I said. "Let's not disappoint them. They want the house, I'm going to give it to them." Milo just stared at me. "Owen, have you finally lost your mind?" "No." I said, a cold, hard plan forming. "I'm going to make them so thirsty for it, so close, they can taste it, that they stop thinking. I need your phone, one of your burners, something they can't trace back to this office." Milo reached into a desk drawer filled with old wires and parts and pulled out a beat-up old-school flip phone. "Prepaid, registered to a ghost. Go nuts." I took the phone. My hands were perfectly steady. I dialed Rachel's number. I took a deep, shuddering breath, and when I spoke, I let all the strength drain out of my voice. I summoned the memory of myself in the hospital the week Clara died. I summoned that hollowed-out, exhausted man. She picked up on the first ring. Her voice was sharp, anxious. "Hello? Hello, who is this?" "Rachel," I whispered. I made my voice crack. I made it sound weak. "Sweetheart, it's Dad." The silence on the other end was electric. I heard a sharp intake of breath. "Dad. Oh my God, Dad. Where are you? Are you okay? We were so worried. Your phone. Why are you calling from this number? Is everything all right? We were so worried." The lie was so fast, so practiced. I'm at the lake," I lied, letting a long, rattling sigh carry over the line. "My old phone. I think I dropped it in the water. It won't turn on. I'm at the bait shop, sweetheart. I had to borrow their phone. Dropped it in the water. Oh, Dad." Her voice was thick with a sickening fake pity. "Are you all right? You sound just awful." "I'm tired, Rachel," I whispered. "I'm just so very tired." I let the silence sit for a moment. The trip was a bad idea. I continued pushing the hook deeper. "Being alone up here, it just gives me too much time to think. And you were right, honey." "Right?" she asked, her voice suddenly cautious. "Right about what, Dad?" "About the house," I said. I let my voice break. "You were right. It's too big. It's too empty. Last night, all those police cars, the sirens, it It scared me so badly, Rachel. I can't be alone there anymore. I heard a muffled sound, a sharp thump, like she had slammed her hand over the receiver to whisper to Grant, who I knew was right beside her. She came back on the line, her voice now dangerously soft, like a spider spinning silk. "Oh, Dad, that's not a bad thing to admit. It's a very big step. We're here for you. You know that." "I know," I said. And I've been thinking about what you said. About moving in with you. About downsizing." "Yes, Dad," she breathed. I could hear the excitement, the greed vibrating just beneath the surface of her concern. "I want to do it, Rachel," I said, letting out a final shuddering sigh of surrender. I want to give you the house. I want you and Grant to have it. I'm done. I'm too tired to fight anymore." For 3 full seconds, there was absolute silence. I thought the line had disconnected. Then I heard it. A sob. A loud, theatrical, utterly fake sob of pure, unadulterated joy. "Oh, Dad!" she wailed, her voice thick with crocodile tears. "Oh my God! That's the best decision, the right decision. You won't regret this. We'll be so happy. We'll take such good care of you. Grant will be so thrilled. I'll bet he will." I thought my stomach churning. I want to get it over with," I said, pushing the final piece of the trap into place. I don't want to drag this out. I'm tired of making decisions, Rachel. I just want it to be over." "Of course, Dad. Whatever you want. Whatever is easiest for you." This was the test. If she was truly desperate, she would jump at this. Can we just go to the lawyer tomorrow, sign the papers? I don't want to go back to that house again until it's yours." "Tomorrow," she gasped. The word was a shot of pure adrenaline. Yes, absolutely. That's perfect. I'll call Ms. Diaz, our lawyer. She handles all our real estate. I'll set it up for the morning." "Oh, Dad, you're doing the right thing. You're finally letting us take care of you." Our lawyer, Ms. Diaz. They already had a lawyer on retainer. Of course they did. "Okay, sweetheart," I whispered. "Okay. I'll drive back tonight." "That's wonderful. Just come straight to our apartment when you get back, okay? Don't even go to the house. You can stay with us tonight. Just come to us. We'll handle everything." "Okay," I said. "I'll see you tomorrow." I hung up the phone. I placed it on Milo's desk. I looked at my oldest friend. His grim expression had been replaced by a slow, cold smile. "She took the bait, boss," he said. "Like a starving shark." I replied, the ice in my veins spreading. She didn't even hesitate. I was still holding the burner phone to my ear. "Okay, sweetheart," I whispered. "Okay, I'll drive back tonight." "That's wonderful. Just come straight to our apartment when you get back, okay? Don't even go to the house." Her voice was still cooing, full of that sick, sweet poison, but my thumb was already moving to the end button. I was pulling the phone away from my ear, already turning to look at Milo. But before my thumb could connect, the line crackled. It wasn't a disconnect. It was a fumbling sound, the sound of the phone being dropped against her chest or muffled against her shoulder. She must have thought the call was over. She must have thought the confused old fool was disconnected, gone already, driving back defeated. And then I heard it. It wasn't her sweet, concerned daughter voice. It wasn't the fake, tearful voice. This was a sound I had never heard from her in her entire 42 years of life. It was a raw, triumphant, unrestrained shriek. "Grant!" The sound was so sharp, so sudden, it made me physically flinch. I froze, my thumb hovering over the button. Milo, watching my face, went completely still. "Grant! Oh my God, he bought it!" I stood paralyzed. the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to my daughter celebrate. "We did it!" she screamed. Her voice was giddy, breaking with a hysterical, joyous laughter that chilled me to the marrow of my bones. He agreed, the confused old fool finally agreed to sign "The house is ours, we did it." The confused old fool, not Dad, not my father. The confused old fool. It wasn't just betrayal. It was contempt. It was the sound of a predator slick with victory standing over its kill. And I was the kill. I stood there in Milo's grimy office, listening to my daughter dance on my grave. I heard Grant's voice muffled in the background, just as ecstatic. "Are you serious? He's coming tomorrow. He's signing tomorrow." "Yes!" Rachel shrieked, laughing so hard she sounded like she was choking. "He dropped his phone in the lake. He's using a bait shop phone. He's completely broken. He said he's tired of fighting, that he just wants us to take care of him. He's driving back tonight and coming straight to our apartment. He doesn't even want to go back to the house." I heard a sharp slap, a high five, a sound of pure celebration. "It's over, baby." Grant's voice came through clearer now, arrogant. "It's finally over. That 20 million, it's ours." 20 million. He said the number. They weren't just stealing my home. They were liquidating my entire life, my legacy, Clara's legacy. They weren't taking care of me. They were disposing of me. They were going to put me in their guest room, the confused old fool, while they sold my life's work to the highest bidder. The $500,000 I gave Grant wasn't a loss. It was an investment. He had used my own money, my retirement, Clara's security, to fund the very scheme to destroy me. And Rachel, my daughter, she was his willing, gleeful accomplice. The memory of her at Clara's funeral, her face a perfect mask of grief, flashed in my mind. Had they been planning this even then? Had they looked at my wife dying in that hospital bed and seen nothing but a roadblock to their payday? I heard more muffled sounds, more joyous, whispered congratulations. And then finally, click. The line went dead. She had finally hung up, never knowing I had been her silent, horrified audience. I slowly, deliberately lowered the burner phone. I placed it gently on Milo's desk, right next to the blueprints for a job I no longer cared about. The workshop was silent. Even the big industrial fans seemed to be holding their breath. I didn't say a word. I just looked at Milo. He just looked at me. His face was hard. His eyes dark with a shared, terrible understanding. He had seen it all in my expression. He didn't need to ask what I'd heard. The confused old fool. The words hung in the air between us. Nothing needed to be said. Milo nodded once, a short, sharp gesture. He turned, picked up his own office phone, and started dialing. Ms. Diaz was ready. I didn't go to their apartment. I didn't drive back. I couldn't. Instead, I went back to Milo's. I spent the night on the lumpy cot in his office, surrounded by the familiar, honest smells of motor oil and welding flux. I didn't sleep. I just stared at the shadows on the ceiling, listening to the old building groan and settle in the night. I was a general preparing for the most important battle of my life. The next morning, I didn't shave. I didn't shower. I put on the clothes I'd been wearing for 2 days. My oldest flannel shirt, the one with a small paint stain on the cuff. My denim work jeans worn thin at the knees. My steel-toed boots scuffed and caked with old mud. I looked in the grimy mirror in Milo's workshop bathroom. I looked exactly like the man they wanted me to be, the confused old fool. Defeated, grieving, and malleable. Milo drove me downtown, his face set in stone. "You sure about this, boss? You look like hell." "That's the point, Milo," I said. "You wait in the lobby. Don't come in unless I call you. But keep your phone on." Ms. Diaz's office was on the 19th floor of a glass tower that scraped the sky, the kind of place where the air itself seemed to cost money. I shuffled in my old boots, looking obscene on the plush, silent gray carpet. The receptionist, a young woman with a sharp suit and a sharper nose, looked at me like I was a spill she needed to clean up. "Owen Mitchell," I mumbled, looking at the floor. I'm here with my daughter, Rachel Hayes. Yes, Mr. Mitchell, she said, her voice tight with disapproval. They are waiting for you in conference room A. I followed her down a long, bright hallway. She pushed open a heavy glass door, and there they were. They weren't just happy, they were radiant. It was like they had won the lottery. No, it was like they had stolen the lottery and knew absolutely that they were getting away with it. Rachel was in a cream-colored pantsuit that probably cost more than my truck. Grant stood beside her in a crisp navy suit, a new gold watch gleaming on his wrist. They were standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the city spread out below them. Their city. "Dad!" Rachel trilled. She rushed over her heels, sinking into the carpet. She threw her arms around me, pulling me into a hug that felt like steel. I could smell her expensive perfume. It was suffocating. "Oh, Dad, I am so proud of you," she whispered, her voice thick with fake emotion. "You are doing the right thing, Mom. Mom would be so proud too." The use of Clara's name was a deliberate twisting knife. I had to clench my jaw to keep from recoiling. I just patted her back, my hand limp and dirty against her clean, expensive suit. "Okay, sweetheart. Okay." Grant strode over, his smile wide and victorious. He didn't hug me. He clapped me on the shoulder, a hard, proprietary gesture, a gesture of ownership. "Owen, glad you made it. Glad you came to your senses." He then gestured to the woman sitting at the head of the massive, polished mahogany table. "Ms. Diaz." She was exactly as I remembered her from when Clara and I had drawn up our wills. She was in her 50s with sharp features, hair pulled back in a severe bun, and eyes that missed nothing. A hawk in a $1,000 suit. She was my shark. She met my gaze for a fraction of a second. No recognition. No emotion. She was a professional. But Grant, in his monumental, blinding arrogance, thought she was his. "Dad," he said, his voice booming with the false kindness one uses for a child or a simpleton. "I want you to meet our lawyer. This is Ms. Diaz. She handles all our real estate. She's the best. She's going to take care of everything for us." He turned to Ms. Diaz. "Ms. Diaz, this is my father-in-law, Owen Mitchell." He was introducing me to my own lawyer, the woman who Milo and I had been on a 3-hour strategy call with last night, the woman who had already drafted the fraud liens and the civil complaint. I played my part. I shuffled my feet, looked at the floor, and gave a small, nervous nod. "Ma'am," I mumbled. "Mr. Mitchell," she replied, her voice a flat, neutral monotone. "Please, sit." They took their seats on one side of the table like a king and queen holding court. I took the seat opposite them alone, my old work clothes looking pathetic against the vast, polished wood. "Well," Grant said, rubbing his hands together, the picture of eager success. "Let's get this show on the road. We have celebratory lunch reservations at noon." "Of course," Ms. Diaz said. She slid a thick stack of documents across the table. It must have been 200 pages bound in a neat professional blue cover. Grant's eyes lit up. This was it. The prize. The $20 million. He reached for the stack eagerly, his fingers almost trembling as he pulled it toward him. He smiled at Rachel, a quick, triumphant flash of teeth. He flipped open the cover, his eyes scanning the first page, ready to see the words, "Deed transfer, ready to sign, ready to claim his victory." Grant pulled the thick, bound document across the polished mahogany. He was still smiling, that wide, predatory grin of a wolf who had cornered its prey. He looked at Rachel and gave her a quick, triumphant wink. He was the king of the world, the man who had outsmarted everyone. He was the CFO. He was the man in charge. He flipped open the blue cover. I watched his face. It was, I decided, the single most satisfying moment of the last 6 agonizing months. The smile didn't just fade. It froze. It cracked. His eyes, which had been bright with a $20 million greed, narrowed in sudden, sharp confusion. His brow furrowed. He read the first page, his lips moving silently. I could almost hear him sounding out the words in his head. Superior Court, Civil Complaint, Plaintiff Owen Mitchell, Defendants Grant Hayes, Rachel Hayes. He looked up. His face was pale, his eyes darting wildly from the paper to Ms. Diaz, and then finally to me. "Wait," he said. His voice, usually so smooth and confident, was a hoarse whisper. This isn't the deed. This isn't the house transfer. There's a mistake." I leaned forward in my old creaking chair, the chair I had deliberately chosen. I let the silence stretch for 1, 2, 3 beats. I let him hang there, suspended in his own disbelief. "No, Grant," I said. My voice wasn't weak anymore. It wasn't the voice of the confused old fool from the fishing lake. It was the voice that had run million-dollar construction sites for 40 years. It was cold. It was hard. It was final. "It's not." Grant's head snapped toward Miss Diaz as if expecting his hired help to fix this. What is this?" he stammered. "There's been a mistake. We're here to sign the deed to my father-in-law's house. He's gifting it to us." "There is no mistake, Mr. Hayes," Mrs. Diaz said. Her voice was flat, clinical, devoid of all emotion. It was the voice of a surgeon about to amputate a gangrenous limb. She tapped the document with a single perfectly manicured finger. "What you are looking at," she continued, "is a civil complaint. Owen Mitchell versus Grant and Rachel Hayes. It is being filed with the Superior Court in exactly 1 hour." Grant looked like he'd been punched in the gut. A complaint for what?" "For passant," Ms. Diaz said. "Repayment and damages totaling $1.5 million. Grant's face went from white to a strange blotchy red. 1.5 million. That's insane for what?" Ms. Diaz picked up the top page as if reading from a script. "For starters, civil fraud, embezzlement based on the misappropriation of funds, using a fraudulently obtained financial power of attorney. Forgery for the digital signature used to authorize commercial services at Mr. Mitchell's property without his knowledge or consent." She looked up from the page, her cold eyes pinning Grant to his chair. "And," she added, "criminal conspiracy to commit elder abuse and financial fraud." Each word landed like a hammer blow. Fraud, embezzlement, forgery, conspiracy, elder abuse. These were not words Grant associated with himself. These were words for low-life criminals, not for men in expensive suits who closed apex deals. He was a criminal. He just hadn't realized it not until this very second. He had been so focused on the 20 million, he had forgotten the price of the crimes he was committing to get it. He tried to speak. A strange gurgling sound came from his throat, but I wasn't looking at him anymore. I turned my head slowly to look at my daughter, Rachel. She hadn't moved. She was still sitting there, frozen in the same position of smug victory she'd had when she walked in. Her hands were still clasped on the table. Her smile was still on her face. But it was no longer a smile. It was a grotesque, paralyzed mask, a rictus of terror. The blood had drained from her face so completely that her expensive makeup stood out like paint on a statue. She looked like she was going to be sick right there on the $19,000 conference room carpet. She stared at the document. She stared at her husband. And then slowly her head turned. Her movements were robotic, like a doll whose strings had been cut. She looked at me. She wasn't looking at the confused old fool. She wasn't looking at the grieving widower. She was seeing for the very first time the stranger sitting across the table. The man in the dirty flannel shirt who had just calmly and deliberately detonated their entire world. Her painted lips trembled. The mask cracked. Dad, she whispered. Her voice was a tiny, horrified squeak, a sound a mouse might make before the hawk strikes. Dad, what are you doing? Her voice was a tiny, terrified squeak. Dad, what are you doing? I looked at my daughter. Her face, a mask of civilized, expensive beauty, was finally cracking. The real, ugly fear was showing underneath. What am I doing, Rachel? I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the silence of that $19,000 conference room like a saw. I'm just catching up on my reading. I'm just an old man, right? A confused old fool. Her face flinched, a violent physical reaction. She knew. She knew I'd heard her on the phone. I'm just a confused old fool, I repeated, letting the words hang in the air. Who's been doing a little research. I leaned forward, my dirty flannel shirt scraping against the polished mahogany. Tell me about Apex Holdings, Rachel. Tell me about Rezoning 7. And while you're at it, tell me about the $20 million. Rachel went rigid. But Grant exploded. He shot out of his chair, the heavy leather armchair slamming back against the glass wall. His face was a blotchy, furious red. You, he shouted, pointing a trembling finger at me. You son of a bitch! You knew you've been playing us that whole fishing trip. The fake phone call. That whole confused old man act. You set us up. Set you up, I asked. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. No, Grant. I just stopped being the fool you wanted me to be. I just paid attention. You set yourselves up. I turned my head. Ms. Diaz, do you have the first exhibit? Ms. Diaz, calm as a statue, reached into her briefcase. She didn't pull out the lawsuit. She slid a single thin folder across the table. Exhibit A, she said, her voice crisp. The full server and access logs from the Fortress security system installed at Mr. Mitchell's property 8 days ago. Grant's eyes widened. It's fascinating reading, I continued as if discussing the weather. It shows the installation order, authorized on October 28th. I looked Grant dead in the eye. I never signed that, Grant. But you did, using my forged digital signature. The signature you created using a power of attorney I never authorized. That's forgery, Grant. Grant started to speak, but I kept going. It also shows, I said, a rather frantic series of login attempts last night. 10 of them, in fact. All trying to access the master admin controls. All failing. You couldn't even guess Clara's birthday, could you? You were trying to lock me out. Instead, you locked your own father in. It's almost poetic. You can't prove any of this, Grant stammered, but the sweat was beading on his forehead. Oh, but I can, I said. You're right, Grant. I did do some reading. You're the CFO of Apex Holdings. A very impressive title. You must be very proud. Ms. Diaz, without missing a beat, slid another folder across the table. Exhibit B. The incorporation documents for Apex Holdings LLC, listing a chief financial officer, Mr. Grant Hayes, the same Mr. Hayes who 2 years ago received $500,000 from Mr. Mitchell for a failed startup. Grant looked like he was suffocating. But you're a fraud, Grant. I said, the rage I'd been suppressing for 24 hours finally rising. You're a fraud in every possible way. You used me. You used my grief, and you used my money. I didn't wait for Ms. Diaz. I reached into the old canvas work bag I'd brought from Milo's shop. I pulled out a thick, messy stack of papers held together by a single strained rubber band. They weren't neat. They weren't bound in blue covers. They were bank statements. My bank statements. I threw the stack onto the polished table right in front of him. The rubber band snapped. Pages scattered everywhere, a blizzard of my financial ruin. You're a flashy man, Grant, I said, my voice rising. You like expensive suits, you like gold watches, you like penthouse apartments, but you're sloppy. Rachel stared at the papers, her eyes wide with confusion. What? What is that? That, I said, jabbing a finger at the scattered pages, is Exhibit C. That is my private trust account. The one Clara and I built for 40 years, and all those lines, Rachel, all those lines in red, those are the withdrawals. I picked up a page and slammed it down in front of her. $50,000 April 10th, $100,000 June 3rd, $80,000 August 21st, week after week after week. I turned and pointed at Grant. He had shrunk in his chair, his arrogance gone, replaced by the terrified look of a cornered animal. That, I roared, is where you have been embezzling $1.5 million from me for the last 6 months, using that same fraudulent power of attorney. The one you forgot to cancel after Clara died. The one you told me was just for medical decisions. Grant was speechless. He was beyond pale. He was gray. But Rachel wasn't looking at me. Her head had turned slowly to look at her husband. Her face was no longer terrified. It was something new. It was something dangerous. It was the face of someone who has just realized they weren't the predator. They were just the other fatter mouse in the trap. $1.5 million, she whispered. Her voice was a low, guttural hiss that was more terrifying than my shouting. She stood up slowly, her hands flat on the table, leaning toward him. Grant, what is he talking about? She looked at the lawsuit. She looked at the bank statements. She looked at his gray, sweating face. Grant, she hissed again. You told me you only needed the house to cover the gambling debts. You told me the $500,000 was gone. Where did $1.5 million go, Grant? Grant's gray, sweating face was a mask of pure terror. He looked at Rachel, his eyes wide and pleading. Rachel, baby, listen to me. It's not what it looks like. I was handling it. It was for us. Handling it. Rachel's voice was no longer a hiss. It was a low, shaking, animalistic growl. Handling what, $1.5 million? She turned away from him, her body shuddering. She looked at the polished mahogany table, at the lawsuit, at the scattered bank statements. She looked like she was seeing the wreckage of her entire life, and she finally understood who had steered the ship onto the rocks. She didn't just sit down. She collapsed. Her legs gave out, and she fell back into the heavy leather armchair, her hands flying to her face. A raw, agonizing sob tore out of her throat. It wasn't the fake, theatrical cry I'd heard on the phone yesterday. This was the real thing. This was the sound of total, complete, and utter ruin. It was all him, she choked out the words muffled by her hands. She pointed a shaking finger at Grant, her husband. It was all him. I said nothing. I just stood there. I let them burn. He told me, she gasped, trying to catch her breath. He told me you were the problem. He told me you were losing your mind, Dad. He said you were becoming senile. He said you were spending all of our inheritance. Her head snapped up, her eyes blazing at me, red-rimmed and wild with a desperate need for me to believe her. He said you were giving it all away, that you were making bad investments. He said that power of attorney was the only thing protecting us, the only thing stopping you from leaving us with nothing. She turned her furious, tear-streaked face back to Grant, who had shrunk against the wall. You lied to me, she shrieked. You told me the Apex deal. You told me it was our only chance, our only way to build a future, a way to secure our assets from him. Rachel, Grant stammered, holding up his hands. And the house, she screamed, ignoring him, her confession now a torrent. He said we had to get the house. He said it was the only way to save our money after. She stopped. Her body tensed. She knew she was on the edge of the final ugliest truth, the one that had been the real engine behind this whole nightmare. After what, Rachel? I pressed my voice like ice. After he lost what money? The money he told you about. She looked at me, her face crumbling. The anger vanished, replaced by a raw, primal fear. He lost everything, she whispered. 2 years ago. The 500,000. The startup. It wasn't a startup, Dad. I know, I said. So what was it? Speak up, Rachel. Say the words. She squeezed her eyes shut, and the truth finally came out, a torrent of shame and terror. Gambling, she screamed, pounding her fist on the expensive table. It was gambling debts. He lost it all. He lost your $500,000 in 6 months online, on sports, on God knows what else, and then he borrowed more. He went to loan sharks. There it was, the real cancer, the one that had been eating them alive from the inside out. He told me they were going to kill him, Dad, she sobbed, rocking back and forth. He said they were going to kill me. He said they wanted $1 million, or they were going to come to the house. He said the only thing we had left was the Apex deal. He said if we could just get your house, just get the 20 million, we could pay them off and we would be safe. She finally looked at Grant, and the hatred in her eyes was pure. But there was no $1 million debt, was there, Grant? There were just more bets. And this 1.5 million. Her voice broke. You weren't paying anyone off. You were just stealing. You were stealing from my father. To keep playing. Grant didn't answer. He couldn't. He was cornered. By me. By his wife. By his own avalanche of lies. He slid down the wall, his expensive suit crumpling until he was in a heap on the floor. He looked at Rachel's disgust. He looked at Ms. Diaz's cold, neutral stare. And then he looked at me. He crawled. On his hands and knees, this proud, arrogant man, this CFO, who had called me a confused old fool, crawled across the plush carpet. He stopped at my feet, my dirty steel-toed work boots. He grabbed my legs, his arms wrapping around my knees, in a desperate, pathetic embrace. Owen. He wept, his face pressed against the rough denim of my jeans. Owen. Please. He looked up, his face a grotesque mask of tears and sweat and terror. Please, you have to help us. You have to save me. What Rachel said. It's true. They are going to kill me. The loan sharks. They're real. And now you've filed this lawsuit. It'll be public. They'll find out I don't have the Apex deal. They'll... Owen, please. He begged, his voice rising to a hysterical shriek. You're the only one. You have to save us. Call it off, please. He was weeping now. Snot and tears ran down his face, soaking into the denim of my old work jeans. This CFO, this mastermind, was just a pathetic, terrified child. He was clinging to my legs, begging the confused old fool to save him from the monsters he had invited into our lives. I looked down at the top of his expensive, well-coiffed head. I felt nothing. No pity, no anger. Just coldness. Save you? I asked. My voice was quiet, but it echoed in the vast, silent room. You crawl into my lawyer's office after planning to have me declared incompetent and steal my home after stealing $1.5 million from my trust fund. And you ask me to save you. Grant just sobbed, incoherent. Please. They'll kill me. Please, Owen, please. Mr. Hayes. Ms. Diaz's voice sliced through his weeping. Get off the floor. You are embarrassing yourself. He flinched as if slapped. He slowly, painfully untangled himself from my legs and crawled back into his chair, a broken, crumpled heap. Rachel was still frozen, her face a mask of dried tears and dawning horror. Ms. Diaz stood up. She walked to the window, looked out at the city for a moment, and then turned back to them. "You have two options," she said, her voice crisp and devoid of emotion. "As of this moment." She held up one perfectly manacled finger. "Option 1. You do nothing. You walk out of this office. In approximately," she checked her watch, "55 minutes, I will file this civil complaint. The lawsuit, your bank statements, the Apex documents, the server logs. All of it will be public record by lunchtime. Your Apex deal will evaporate, and your $20 million payday will vanish. And your creditors, the loan sharks you mentioned, they will read all about it. They will know definitively that you have no money to pay them. I cannot imagine they will be pleased." Grant made a small, choked, gagging sound. "I'm not finished," Ms. Diaz said. "Simultaneously, I will deliver this entire file, including the audio recording of you both plotting, to the district attorney's office. Given the evidence, the forgery, the fraudulent power of attorney, the $500,000 startup, lie the $1.5 million in embezzlement, they won't just file charges. They will pursue a RICO case. Grant, you will be looking at a minimum of 15 years in federal prison. And those loan sharks, they will know exactly where you are." She then turned her cold gaze on my daughter. "And you, Rachel, as a co-conspirator who actively participated in the plot, who lured your father. You will be charged as an accomplice. You will likely serve 3 to 5 years. Your father," she gestured to me, "will be called as the primary witness against you both. That is option 1. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by Rachel's hitched, shallow breathing. Grant was gray. He looked like a corpse. He licked his dry, cracked lips. "What?" he whispered. "What is option 2? Ms. Diaz looked at me. It was my turn. I stood up. I walked over to the stack of blue-bound documents, the lawsuit, and I pushed it aside. I picked up a second, much thinner stack of papers that Ms. Diaz had already prepared. I threw them on the table in front of him. "Option 2, I said, my voice low and hard. "You sign these, right now." Grant's trembling hand reached for the papers. "What? What is this?" "That," I said, "is a full legal confession. It details everything. The fraudulent power of attorney you tricked me into signing while my wife was dying. The forged digital signature. The $500,000 startup lie. The $1.5 million you embezzled from my trust account. The entire Apex Rezoning 7 scheme. You will sign it acknowledging every crime, and you will sign it now." And what?" Grant whispered. "If I sign, you won't. You won't file the lawsuit. You won't go to the police." "Oh, I'm still keeping the lawsuit," I said. "This confession will be held in trust by Ms. Diaz. A little insurance policy just in case you ever forget who you are. But that's not all you're going to sign." I tossed another single sheet of paper onto the pile. "That," I said, "is a quitclaim deed." Grant and Rachel both stared at it. "You are going to sign over ownership of your precious penthouse apartment. The one with the glass walls and the doorman. The one I paid the $100,000 down payment for. You are signing it over to me today, effective immediately, as partial repayment for the $1.5 million you stole." Grant just stared, speechless. He was broken. But Rachel finally broke. The reality of what I was saying hit her, not the morality, not the crime, but the consequence. The apartment," she cried, her voice cracking. You're taking our home, but if we sign that, where will we live? Where will we go?" I looked at her. My daughter. the confused, greedy, pathetic shell of the girl I had raised. She wasn't crying for me. She wasn't crying for her mother. She wasn't even crying for her criminal husband. She was crying for her penthouse. I felt the last tiny flickering ember of pity in my heart die. It turned to cold, hard ash. I looked at her, my face devoid of all emotion. "I don't care." Her head snapped up, shocked. "That," I said, my voice flat and final, "is not my problem anymore." I pointed to the papers. "Sign it." 6 months. That's how long it's been. 6 months since I sat in that glass tower and watched my daughter's face crumble as her world evaporated. I stood on the flat brown earth where my house used to be. It was gone. I'd had it demolished 2 weeks after I won the case. I couldn't stand to look at it. It wasn't a home anymore. It was a monument to their greed. Now it was just 2 acres of clean, raw dirt smelling of sawdust and the cool October morning. Milo stood beside me, his arms crossed. He was holding a large roll of blueprints. The silence was peaceful, broken only by the distant sound of construction 2 blocks over. The Apex Holdings project. It was stalled, tangled in lawsuits and financing problems now that they had lost their centerpiece. My centerpiece. "Did you ever hear from them?" Milo asked, his voice a low rumble. I knew who he meant. No. They had signed. Of course they signed. In that polished conference room with their lives reduced to 2 terrible options, they signed. Grant's hand shook so badly he could barely hold the pen. Rachel just sat there, hollow, signing her name like an automaton. I walked out of that office and never looked back. Ms. Diaz was ruthless. She was a shark, and she was my shark. The quitclaim deed was filed before they even left the building. She had the penthouse on the market by the next morning. It sold in 3 days in a cash deal. The $1.5 million Grant had embezzled was returned to my trust, along with another $500,000 in damages. As for Grant, the civil lawsuit, though we settled it, became public record. The Apex deal vanished. The loan sharks Rachel had screamed about. Well, I imagine they found out he no longer had a $20 million payday. I heard from Tom, my realtor friend, that Grant was being investigated by the state for his gambling debts and financial misconduct. He and Rachel were last seen packing their expensive car in the middle of the night. They lost the apartment. They lost everything. They simply vanished. They were gone. I had my money back. I had my land. And I had my freedom. Milo finally unrolled the blueprints, the large white paper crackling in the quiet air. He held the plans open for me to see. "So," he said, a slow, gravelly grin spreading across his face, "the confused old fool decides not to sell the $20 million lot to the Apex vultures after all." I let out a short laugh. It was the first real laugh I'd had in a long time. It felt good. "No," I said, kicking at a clump of dirt with the toe of my boot. "I'm not selling. The Apex guys must be spitting nails." Milo chuckled. "Their whole glass tower is ruined. They have to build around you now. They offered you a fortune." "They did," I admitted. $22 million, that was their final offer last week. They just don't get it, Milo. They think the money is the prize. They think this land is just rezoning 7. I looked out over the empty space. I didn't see the dirt. I saw Clara 20 years ago kneeling right here planting her hydrangeas. I saw her sitting on the porch swing watching the sunset. "They don't understand," I said, my voice softening. This was her favorite spot. She loved this land. She hated the idea of skyscrapers. She always said this neighborhood didn't need more cold glass boxes. She said it needed kindness. I turned to Milo. She always wanted to do something for the families at the oncology center. The ones we met when she was sick. The families that had to sell their own homes just to pay for treatment. The ones who had nowhere to go. Milo nodded. He knew. He'd been there with me sitting in those hard plastic hospital chairs. She always said, I continued, my voice thick with the memory, that we had so much, that we were lucky, that others had nothing to hold on to when the storm came. I pointed to the blueprints in his hand. So we're not selling, we're building. Milo's grin widened. He unrolled the plans fully proudly. He pointed with a thick finger to the bold title block at the bottom of the page. The Clara Mitchell Center, he read aloud, his voice clear and strong in the morning air. A free residential therapy and support facility for families coping with long-term illness and loss. I nodded. The ache in my chest, the one that had lived there since Clara's last breath, finally eased. It was still there, but it wasn't grief anymore. It was purpose. My daughter, Rachel. I said the name, feeling strange on my tongue. She told me it was time for me to move on, that I should leave this house and move in with them. I looked at the empty land, at the future we were about to build on the ruins of their greed. She was right, I said. It is time to move. I looked at Milo. I'm moving this $20 million exactly where it belongs. I'm moving it into Clara's legacy. I took a deep breath of the clean, cool air. That, I said, is the only thing worth a damn. The lesson learned from this story is that greed and deceit ultimately destroy the very foundation of family. It shows that underestimating others, especially those you are supposed to respect, is a fatal mistake. While manipulation like Grant's and Rachel's may seem like a fast path to riches, it's built on a rotten foundation. True strength and legacy aren't found in what you steal the $20 million, but in integrity and using your resources for a purpose greater than yourself, just as Owen did by building the Clara Mitchell Center. This story reveals the devastating truth of betrayal within a family. Have you ever felt underestimated or taken advantage of by the very people who should have loved you most? Share your experience in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories.